And welcome to the first of the monthly Call Kemis. I wanted to spell it with a K, Kemi, but they wouldn't let me do that. Welcome.
Thank you.
You've had, the last time we spoke, I think, was in July. You've had quite an interesting couple of months since then, haven't you?
I have indeed.
We're not going to do a sort of what sometimes happens in these things where I interview you for 10 minutes and we go to the calls. We're going to go straight to the calls because there are so many coming in. Emails as well. If you want to email your question, you can do so to Iain, IAIN, @lbc.co.uk. You can text 84850, WhatsApp 0345 6060 973. Lots of calls coming in, but I'm going to start off with an email on something, news that broke in the last hour from James in Blackheath, who says, legal issues are already getting in the way of Starmer's one-in, one-out deal. Would Kemi like to say, I told you so? Well, there's a challenging question for you to start off with.
James, yes, you've taken the words out of my mouth. That is exactly what I would say to Labour. We told you so. It wasn't just me, lots of people. We had a Rwanda removals plan. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it would have third country processing. And that would let a lot of people realise that you wouldn't just get easy access to the UK. But there are so many legal problems with removing people from our country, people who shouldn't be here. Immigration is too high. But on top of that, people arriving illegally, claiming asylum when really they're not asylum seekers, they're economic migrants, is a problem that's increasing all across Europe. Other countries have it worse than we do. We've got to get tough on it. And that means having a sensible plan. We had a deportation bill disapplying the Human Rights Act, making sure that if you arrive illegally, you're deported immediately. No benefits for these groups of people. We need to get very tough. And Labour is going to learn the hard way. They're just playing nice, one in, one out with France. That's not a real plan, and they can't even do one in, one out.
But this is going to fuel the argument about the European Convention on Human Rights, isn't it? Because although it hasn't gone to that, but you can imagine it'll go to end up in the Supreme Court, then it'll end up there. Now, you always seem to me to be quite sceptical on whether that would actually help the situation, but I detect a shift in your position over the last few months.
So I've always said that if we need to leave the ECHR in order to control our borders, we should leave. But it's not a silver bullet. There are many countries who are in the ECHR who are able to deport. Why aren't we doing the same? But every single day that I've been leader of the opposition, there's been a crazy story just like this one, where somebody who should be removed is using our own legal system against us, and that is hardening my view. I want a very tough policy. And what I did was I commissioned, one of the best lawyers in the country, Lord David Wolfson, the KC, and a few other lawyers to come up with a plan. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to deport, people arriving illegally. I want to be able to protect our veterans from endless harassment cases. And they are going to give me advice which will then help me make a decision on what we're doing.
You're announcing that at the conference?
Absolutely. So at party conference, people will find out what we're doing. I can't say more than that. But what I'm not going to do is just rush out and say, we're going to do this without a plan. This is a Conservative Party that is changing under my leadership. We have to be responsible, personal responsibility, fiscal, civic, and putting out policies in a responsible way is part of our brand now.
The problem here is, though, with this particular case, apparently the argument put forward by the lawyers was, well, if he gets sent back to France, he'll be destitute. Now, if they really won the argument just on that and got the judge to say, no, he must stay, then, that's open season. No one will ever be sent back, will they?
Exactly. We are basically turning our country into a refuge for anyone who may have even the slightest bit of unhappiness in any other country. That is a serious abuse of the asylum system. And being sent back to France, a European country, very high standards across the board, being a reason for you not to be deported, I think is shocking. And this was supposed to be the soft-hearted, humane deal, one in, one out. We'll send back somebody who's crossed illegally, and then we'll take in some people who have, relatives here or something like that. It's not working. What's happening is that France is sending their people, so we're getting lots of people in. We're not getting anybody out. We need some tough laws. The government should look at our deportation bill. How do we start disapplying the Human Rights Act and so on? And then we'll start fixing this mess.
Right, let's go to our first caller. It's Alistair in Marlborough. Hello, Alistair. What would you like to ask Kemi?
Hi, good evening. It must be very disappointing to have lost a key member of your shadow cabinet, and I believe, unluckily for you, the 13 Tory to have defected to Reform. Now, Marlborough is the largest town in the constituency of Danny Kruger. It's probably about as far away from being what you would consider to be a traditional Reform seat as you can imagine, with no flags, little immigration, and what there is are those people providing vital services in local care homes, the NHS, as well as the usual hospitality sectors. So, would you agree with me and a local Conservative councillor that Kruger has no mandate to represent the people of Marlborough and the rest of the constituency, and that a by-election should be called?
Well, I think it's a very good point. Reform came forth in that constituency. That's not what people voted for. And, when we had defections in 2014 to UKIP, the MPs, I think Mark Reckless and Douglas Carswell, did stand down and fight a by-election. But what we're seeing right now with a lot of these defections is people who are running away rather than solving difficult problems. I'm not somebody who runs away from difficult problems. I'm a tough person. I see things through. The easy thing to do is think, oh, well, people, the Conservative Party is not doing well in the polls. Who's doing well in the polls? Reform will rush there. We had the same thing last year when we had 2 MPs defect to Labour when Labour was doing well in the polls. This doesn't fix anybody's problems, and it actually creates a lot of distrust in politics if you don't know who you're voting for or what they're going to do after they've been elected. We need to show people that we stand by our principles and we stay the course.
Okay. So if, let's for argument's sake, say in 2 years' time, the Conservative Party has recovered, you're doing really well, you've overtaken Reform as the challenger to Labour, and you get maybe a Reform UK MP defecting to you, will you give us a guarantee now that you would say to that MP, well, I think you should fight a by-election?
Well, we should talk about whether we would even take any defections.
Really?
This is something that I have spoken about. We need people to understand what the Conservative Party is about. There are many people who I like who are not Conservatives. Someone like Rosie Duffield, I think, is an amazing person. She is of the left. People keep asking me, why don't you get Rosie to defect? Why don't you get Rosie to defect? If we are trying to show that we are an authentic Conservative Party, then just taking everybody who has a grievance with their own party is actually not me following my principles. Now, there might be people who defect on principled grounds, but right now, the key thing is doing the job that we've got to do, which is being the opposition.
Sure.
You look at what's happening with Labour, you look at what's happening with the country. We've got to focus on that. All of this stuff about who's jumping to one party or another actually doesn't make a difference to the lives of your listeners.
Well, it does if there are quite a lot that start to do it. And I mean, OK, the 13 people that Alistair referred to, most of those aren't actually sitting MPs.
Yes, and not in the shadow cabinet.
No,
either.
but I mean, they are sort of reasonably well known within the Conservative Party, quite a lot of them. Two ex-Conservative MPs, Maria Caulfield and Henry Smith, today have gone over. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a torrent, but you're going up to your conference. I can see by maybe the day before the conference starts that Nigel Farage will unveil a big name.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised at Reform trying to destabilise our conference. It is a very interesting thing that when we had Labour on the ropes with the Mandelson issue, everybody's looking at a Prime Minister with very bad judgment. Out comes Reform with, ooh, look, we've got a defection. They're not focused on what's happening to the country. What Labour is doing is actually really serious. They have a political crisis. How are they managing our economy? We need to focus on that. Instead, we're talking about who's jumped to which party. It's a distraction.
Well, just finally, just to answer Alice's question definitively, do you think that there should be a by-election in Danny Kruger's constituency?
So I have always said that people, they vote for the policy in our country is that you vote for an individual. I think a by-election is an honourable thing to do to show that it is principled. But right now, I'm not interested in talking about who's jumped out and whether.
But Alistair wants a straight answer, yes or no.
But I have answered. I have answered the question. It's not a yes or no question.
Alistair, do you think she's answered the question?
People need to follow their conscience. If the people in Danny Kruger's constituency want a by-election, there's a lot that they can do. They can have.
Well, no, there isn't, because there's no recall petition on this.
There's no recall petition, but they can make their feelings known. But a by-election also costs a lot of money. It's very distracting. And the next thing, we'll see that we're not talking about the economy. We're talking about what's happening in the by-election. It's very disappointing to lose an MP. And Alistair, I'm very sorry about what's happened and that you feel let down by Danny Kruger. What I can say is that there are still Conservatives in your constituency, in Wiltshire, in Parliament, and we're going to keep doing the job that Conservatives have to do, which is hold the government to account.
Alistair?
Can I have a comeback?
Yep.
I find it absolutely staggering that 15 months ago, the Reform Party finished a distant fourth place in this constituency, which was actually one that was rewritten with the new borderlines. So it's the first time. It's the first time that it has ever, if you go back to what the old constituency was, ever been a non-Tory seat. And I find it absolutely staggering that the leader of the Conservative Party isn't absolutely appalled by the fact that now the constituency is being represented by a party that finished fourth 14 months ago.
But I am disappointed, Alistair. I'm just as appalled as you. It is extremely disappointing. From my perspective, I had MPs who were elected on a particular manifesto, and they're doing, the one particular MP has now done something that looks more like it is in his personal interest and is actually really about helping, joining a party that's doing well in the polls rather than delivering on our principles. But the main point I'm making is that right now, we need to not get distracted by who's jumped into which party and look at what's happening in the economy.
Well,
That's a critical point.
Just to finish off this discussion, David in Nottingham has just sent in an email saying, does it get to a point where so many defections from the Conservatives to Reform start to damage Reform, given the association of those people with previous Tory failure, e.g. Nadine Dorries? If so, perhaps Kemi can push a few forward. Have you got a few that you'd like to get rid of?
Well, all I will say is that Nigel Farage said he wanted to destroy the Conservative Party, but he doesn't look like he's able to build his party without disaffected Conservatives. That is not what we're doing. We're trying to build our party the hard way, but the true way, which is rebuilding trust, being honest, not just telling people what they want to hear. Reform is really a one-man band. A lot of people are voting for him personally rather than any particular policies or principles. We are a team. My party is a team. And it's sad when we lose people on the journey back. It's going to be a very difficult journey. We have to work hard, but we are a team.
Right, let's go. Alistair, thank you for that. Let's go to Julia in Bromley. Hi, Julia.
Hello, good evening. So my question is, what will you be doing to stop the far-right extremism that's spreading through the UK right now? Tommy Robinson, a former participant in the BNP, the EDL, openly racist movement, on Saturday welcomed Elon Musk onto an enormous screen in the centre of London. My parents were there and were horrified to see what was going on. Elon Musk then directed the people of the UK to act violently, to overthrow our democratically elected government. What would you do to stop this from happening again?
Thank you, Julia. It's a really good question. And the reports I heard about the protests and the rallies at the weekend were actually quite different. If you read the article that Trevor Phillips, a very respected broadcaster on Sky News, someone of Caribbean heritage, wrote, he said it's a lot more complex than that. There are a lot of people in our country who are feeling uncertain, they're feeling anxious. And I think that when you get very large groups of people in London like that, there will inevitably be problems. We had it when it's Notting Hill Carnival. This protest had quite a lot of people there, clerics and so on. Let's not give people a particular label just because Tommy Robinson is there. This is not about Tommy Robinson.
Would you describe him as far right?
I'm not interested in giving labels to people. I'm interested.
Well, he's not far left, is he?
No. Well, he's not far left. But I'm interested in answering Julia's question, which is what do we do? And the first thing that we should do is stop trying to label people who have different opinions from us. If people are breaking the law, which Tommy Robinson has done on occasion, I think that the law, needs to be enforced properly. But actually, if people are expressing anxiety, expressing, loss of national or cultural identity, that is something the politicians need to address with reasonable rhetoric, not talking about escalating violence or anything like that. And what we're seeing is many people very worried about what's happening to our country. They see a lot of people turning up, taking our system for granted, asylum seekers who aren't real asylum seekers, getting things that a lot of people in this country cannot get. They also see people, claiming benefits when they're not entitled to, people who should be in work, and they feel that the country is not fair. We need to build a fairer country. And what politicians can do to unite the country is show how we're working hard to create a fairer society, make sure that we can continue to be a wealthy society. We're getting poorer at the moment because of the government's terrible policies. That's what we can do, and we'll see a lot of this dissipate.
So you recognise that many of the protesters had legitimate concerns, but would you therefore be open to meeting Tommy Robinson to talk about these concerns? Because there are 150,000 people there, which I think was probably more than most people thought would attend.
Yeah, but I don't need to meet Tommy Robinson for people to know what I think. What I want people to know is what Kemi Badenoch thinks. I'm the leader of the opposition. I am the leader of the Conservative Party. And what I'm saying is what I can and will do if my party is elected into government and I become Prime Minister. Wanting to meet every individual who, has got a particular viewpoint, legitimate or illegitimate, is not really what my job is about. I meet people from all across the country. Today I was meeting businesses in Soho who are talking about how they have to close because the business taxes are too much. Yesterday I was on a farm talking to farmers. That's what I'm doing. I want to talk to everyday people, not just the people who may want more publicity.
If you had been in the middle of that demonstration on Saturday, so you just happened to walk through it, do you think you would have felt safe? What kind of reception do you think you would have got from the people that were there?
Well, I saw there were all sorts of people there. It was a majority white crowd, but there were black people there who were saying the same thing. You read Trevor Phillips' article. I do not want to see a society where we start dividing each other based on the colour of our skin. We never used to do that. We never had, the kind of laws that they had in the US, the Jim Crow laws. This is a country where the least racist country in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this job. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair. We need to celebrate that. And what I really hate is people on all sides of the political spectrum who keep trying to cause division by saying, it's this group of people who disagree with me who are causing all those problems. And social media has been amplifying and escalating that. What I'm trying to do is de-escalate that.
One person who isn't trying to de-escalate that is Elon Musk, who you, I think it's fair to say, have sort of slightly courted in the past. I mean, he addressed this crowd. Well, I think there are occasions when you said some positive things about him. But he addressed that crowd and said, well, they're coming for you. You need to fight back. And I think the word violence was mentioned. You've got to condemn that, surely.
You look at the comments that he made, and it's very easy to read it in multiple contexts. What I don't want to be doing is condemning this person, condemning that person. We've been doing that for many years.
He was inciting violence, Kemi.
I don't actually think that he was. I think he was saying, if people are being violent, fight back.
Fight back or die.
Well, it's not the sort of language that I would use. But what I'm trying to do right now is de-escalate. Even asking me to say, well, will you condemn Elon Musk? That's not a de-escalation. All of this.
Well, I think it is, actually. Well, I think people out there listening will think, well, that's exactly what a responsible leader of the opposition should do.
I disagree, Ian, because a lot of people would have interpreted his remarks very differently. What I need to do is set out
And you're pandering to them.
No, I'm not pandering to them. What I'm not going to do is set my stall based on what did Tommy Robinson say? Do you agree? What did Elon Musk say? Do you agree? I'm not a commentator.
Well,
I'm a politician.
Sure.
No, Ian, I'm pushing back on this.
Okay.
We need to be very, very careful about how we handle these issues. And what I see happening again and again is lots of people trying to whip up sentiment saying, this person said this, that person said that. What am I going to do as leader of the Conservative Party? We're going to have policies that are going to make sure the society is fairer, that people pay their way, that our system is not exploited. We need to grow our economy because a lot of people are frustrated because they are feeling poorer. I'm not going to indulge in rhetoric, which I think is problematic, but I'm also not going to be a commentator. That's for people on the media and radio show hosts to do, but that's not what I am. I am a politician and leader of the opposition.
What a hurtful thing to say.
Don't take it personally.
No,
it is a trap, and
I'm not seeking to trap you. I'm not seeking to trap you, but all I'm seeking to do, I can say to you that Nigel Farage has categorically said that he would not have anyone who's a supporter of Tommy Robinson or Tommy Robinson himself as a member of Reform. He banned the BNP from joining the Brexit Party at the time, or people who had been former BNP members.
Yeah, but the Conservative Party has been doing that for decades.
No, but you're not even willing to call Tommy Robinson far right.
No, I'm just not engaging in that, because you know what happened last year? The Prime Minister went out and called a group of parents and many legitimate protesters far right. It didn't calm things down. What it did was escalate, and we saw riots in Southport. I'm not Keir Starmer. I'm not just going to start labelling people because I think it's convenient for my supporters. I'm going to be responsible, and that means de-escalating the rhetoric. thing. I didn't go to the rally and poll everybody and ask them what their views were. So what I'm not going to do is start labelling people. We just need to stop this. We need to stop it.
Julia, have a short comeback.
Hello. I'm afraid that didn't answer any of my questions whatsoever. Facts are not labelling. So the fact that somebody has been a member of the British National Party, an openly racist movement.
Well, of course, the British National Party is a far-right party, but that's not what I was being asked.
Can I just finish the sentence? Can I just finish my sentence? A fact is, nobody rolls out of bed and marches from all different corners around the UK behind Tommy Robinson, who has been a member of the British National Party and the EDL and isn't aware that he is openly racist. And if we as a country don't acknowledge that, we are not helping anybody to move forward. It's not playing games.
Julia, I respectfully disagree. There were 300,000 people reportedly at that rally. There were people of all heritage at that rally. I am not going to be calling them far right because there are some people who I didn't like who were there. What we need to do is look at
but you can call Tommy Robinson far right.
Yes, I can. But what I'm not interested in is having a debate about Tommy Robinson. I'm interested in a debate about where this country is going. And if we keep focusing on these individuals, all we're doing is actually giving them more publicity. That's not where we should be.
Julia, thank you very much. Let's go to Rosa in Camberley in Surrey. Rosa, hi. What would you like to ask Kemi?
I wanted to ask Kemi whether she agrees with Reform's presentation of Lucy Connolly as, Keir Starmer's political prisoner, putting aside sentencing because this isn't being framed as an issue of prison reform, but rather freedom of speech. So it's about what she actually said and not the sentencing. What's her view on this?
So what she said was wrong. What she said did break the law. But what we also saw was that, I know you don't want to talk about the sentencing, but it is actually very important context. It seemed to be harsher than what people who committed actual violence got. Maybe she had bad lawyers or whatever. I think describing her as a political prisoner is Reform trying to draw a parallel between things happening in this country and in places like North Korea. Nigel Farage has explicitly said this. He was in the US last week or the week before, and he called our country at a US congressional hearing. He said that we were like North Korea. I think that's the parallel that he's trying to draw. I think that's completely wrong. The UK is not North Korea. It's nothing like that. I have met genuine political prisoners who escaped from North Korea. It is a horrible place. That's an unfair comparison to draw. I think that there is a case that the Lucy Connolly's situation was not handled well. I wrote an article where I thought that she should have been getting some day release given the crime that she had been put in prison for, the fact that she had young children. I think the different rules may have been applied to her because of the high profile. And there's a better way for us to do this.
Nigel Farage platformed her on the stage at his conference, and she was doing a podcast with Liam Halligan and Alison Pearson. Would you have done that at your conference?
I think it depends on the message that the person is putting forward. It's always very interesting to hear people talking about what they think is going wrong in a country. We had all sorts of people that we had on our platforms, but I don't think they'd ever been people who had gone to prison. Lucy Connolly, I think, has a very interesting case that was on the boundaries of right and wrong. I think there's a lot that we can do in terms of improving our justice system. I think that she's somebody who can contribute to that debate. So why not have her on there? I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
J.D. Vance says there's a free speech crisis in this country. What do you reckon?
I think that there's also a free speech crisis in the US. I was unbelievably shocked by the murder of Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was, from all accounts, what it looks like, assassinated for exercising his right to free speech. That is a far more significant thing that has happened in the US than has happened in the UK. I don't think that things are perfect in the UK. We do have free speech in this country, but I wrote an article in the Daily Mail, must have been yesterday, about what happened to Graham Linehan. And what we can draw similarities with the Charlie Kirk case is that there are some people who just cannot bear to hear anyone else's opinion, that they will harass them with every tool that they can, whether it's guns in the US or making reports to the police that get people arrested. And this is why I don't want to be talking about specific individuals and, criticizing based on particular viewpoints. I want to criticize the viewpoints rather than the individuals. That's how we de-escalate. That's why I was, very much in disagreement with Julia about how we fix this.
Rosa, do you want to come back?
Yes, well, on that point about criticizing, labeling the viewpoints, not the people, I'm not interested in speculating about the content of the hearts of everyone on the march the other day, but if you look at the content of the speeches issued, they were very concerning, and the ideas expressed, if you're willing to have an open conversation about the nature of those ideas, if they're not far right, I don't know what is. And I truly believe there will be people there who heard that speech and thought, bloody hell, that's way too far. So I accept that about people attending, but I think as a politician, you do need to take a view on the ideas, like remigration as an idea is taking hold, reform of flirting with it. And
I think that is a problem. I did not listen to the speeches. All I read were reports and saw news reports about the numbers of people that were there. And if there's anything which I hear which I think is abhorrent or wrong, I'm perfectly prepared to call it out. I think that's where we should be taking the conversation. Is it right for people to say this or that, rather than going after specific individuals? Because that's when we start getting into witch hunts and hounding based on personal opinion, which is not where I want the debates to go.
You mentioned Charlie Kirk a moment ago. I've got an email here from Doreen in Streatham. You will have seen that the president-elect of the Oxford Student Union, George Aberonye, celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk in a message that made its way into the Telegraph newspaper. What was your reaction when you saw his comments?
I thought it was quite sad, because unlike many of us, he'd actually, met Charlie Kirk.
Well, he debated him, didn't he?
Yes, and I think there's only one response to what happened to Charlie Kirk, and that is condolences and sorrow, and a disgust that people are killed for their views, no matter what those views are. That is not the mark of a humane society. But what we need right now is a political class of people who are tough and who can talk about these things without being shy or afraid. People who have a backbone. And what I'm worried about, certainly on the government side, is that there is just a general fear of even wading into this space. I'm not afraid to talk about free speech. I'm not afraid, to have a disagreement with your listeners. People might think that, I'm giving some people a free pass. But I also know what happens when we start to attack individuals rather than viewpoints, and it's quite a dark road to go down.
But this individual is going to be he's president-elect of the Oxford Union, a very prestigious position, and he was celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk. Do you think he should lose his place at university or not be prevented from taking up his role as president of the union?
Well, this is one of those issues where you have to take a call on what it is you're defending. If you believe in free speech, then you also believe in the right for people to say things that you don't want to hear. And should people be losing their jobs, their places at university because they said something that we didn't like? I don't think so. I think if they said something that broke the law, yes. I think there's a more convincing case that should he be the president of a debating society if he doesn't respect free speech. I think that's a different question. But asking somebody to lose their university place because you don't like what they said is the same cancel culture, which I rejected when it was coming from the left. And so I will continue to reject it because it is the principle of free speech I support, not free speech for my kind of people and no free speech for other kind of people.
How much do you fear for your own safety? Because, you must see things like that and think, well, look, I'm a leading light in British politics. I'm obviously a person that some people on the left really, really don't like. Is that something that crosses your mind at all?
Of course it does. Iain, it's next month it'll be 4 years since my colleague David Amess was murdered. He's a fellow Essex MP. I think about it very often. I think about his family, 5 children who lost their dad, absolutely devastating for them. And there's no way you can do this job without thinking about that. And nearly 10 years ago, something similar happened to Joe Cox, a Labour MP. So we do think about our safety, but it's a risk that we all take as politicians, that you stick your head above the parapet and you get attention. It's why many politicians don't want to say anything controversial, and they want to talk about puppies and animal rights and nice things, so that they're not they're not hated because nobody would disagree with them. But real politics requires real courage. It requires people who aren't going to be pushed around, people who will say things even though that there is a risk. That's the sort of person I am. Our country was built on people doing that, making sacrifices, doing their duty. That's the kind of leader that I want to be, and that's what I'll keep doing.
But do any of your children ever say, "Mummy, why are you doing this? Why can't we have a normal life?"
They say that all the time. I have a 5-year-old who doesn't understand why I'm not around to do lots of fun things with her because I have to work. Their children's birthdays where I'm there briefly and have to rush out. I think they notice it more from that side. I don't want them to be scared about what could happen to their mother. That 3 children losing their mother would be a horrible thing. But I also think that if people like me do more talking, we can actually make things better.
Okay.
Being very responsible, talking, in a civilized way, de-escalating, not throwing abuse here and there and rushing to condemn everybody. That's what's going to make society better.
Well, you've got 27 more minutes to do a lot of talking
with
our callers. If you'd like to put a call into Kemi, 0345 6060 973. First, let's get the latest news headlines on LBC at 8:34 with Darryl Jackson.
The Conservative leader's told LBC her message to Labour is, "We told you so," after an Eritrean man won a High Court bid to block him being deported to France. He was due to be removed tomorrow under the government's one-in, one-out scheme. Kemi Badenoch told LBC that Labour is going to learn the hard way that you can't play nice.
There are so many legal problems with removing people from our country, people who shouldn't be here. Immigration is too high. But on top of that, people arriving illegally, claiming asylum when really they're not asylum seekers, they're economic migrants, is a problem that's increasing all across Europe. Other countries have it worse than we do. We've got to get tough on it.
Donald Trump's due to touch down in the UK shortly for a rare second state visit, but it will be one that will largely keep him out of public view. And a 22-year-old man's due in court charged with the aggravated murder of US political activist Charlie Kirk. Prosecutors say they're seeking the death penalty for Tyler Robinson. LBC weather, heavy rain affecting much of the UK tonight. Dry for northeast Scotland, a low of 6 degrees.
This is LBC. Play. This is LBC. Message Iain Dale on WhatsApp now on 0345 6060 973.
8:36, Kemi Badenoch here until 9. Then it's Cross Question after 9. We have Sir Trevor Phillips on the show. We have the businessman John Caldwell. We have the party chairwoman for Labour, Anna Turley, and Wendy Morton, the former Conservative Chief Whip. They'll be here to take your calls. Right, let's go to Wesley in Gravesend. Hello, Wesley.
Good evening, Iain. Good evening, Kemi.
Hello, Wesley.
Hello. My question is, if Keir Starmer did not appoint Lord Mandelston and we did not get a trade deal with the US, what would be your and your party stance?
So first of all, we did not need Lord Mandelson to get a trade agreement with the US. And these are tariff deals. They're not big trade agreements. He didn't get anything on steel, something that we got in 2022, for example, making sure that there were no tariffs on
You were
steel.
Trade Secretary.
Actually, Liz was Trade Secretary at the time. But even as Trade Secretary, there were things that we were getting with the US. These are small deals, not full trade agreements. But the bottom line, I'm afraid, is that if somebody has been in such a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, a convicted sex trafficker, has been sacked twice or had to be removed from government twice, there is something about what kind of country you are if you appoint them to that role. And the close relationship that he had with the convicted paedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, only came to light from my perspective recently, but it looks like Keir Starmer knew.
But people did know that he was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein at the time he was appointed. And Stephen Doughty, the Foreign Office Minister, I was watching the debate today, and he put to you, well, I don't recall you or any other Conservative saying anything at the time when he was appointed. I mean, that's a fair charge.
No, it's not. We did. Alicia Kearns made those comments. We did say things. Lots of people criticised it. What we didn't know was that I didn't know, for example, that while Jeffrey Epstein was in prison, Peter Mandelson was staying at his flat. There's a big difference between going to someone's party.
But nor did Keir Starmer.
No, but when I asked him about it on Wednesday, he knew by then, and he still said he had full confidence. So the issue is about the appointment first, but also why the Prime Minister was defending this man when all of this stuff had come out. And that is a reflection on Keir Starmer's judgment. He doesn't know what to think or what to do unless someone else is telling him, whether it's Peter Mandelson or Morgan McSweeney. And that is a very dangerous place for a Prime Minister to be. And if he had any courage at all, he would have turned up in Parliament today and answered those questions himself. When I had difficult questions, when I was a Secretary of State, and it was about my decision to do something, I turned up. I didn't send my junior ministers to. I could have.
Well, he was Prime Minister. I mean, he could have had a very important previous engagement.
Yeah, so, but where's the Foreign Secretary? Where's the Foreign Secretary, or even the former Foreign Secretary who did the appointment? Where are the senior people, the people who would have known? Instead, they send the people who have no clue and no idea to be human shields, and that shows what kind of Labour Party and what kind of government we've got. These are weak people with no backbone, no courage. I'm not afraid of being criticised or being shouted down. You know, I have the courage of my conviction. That's what you need in a leader, not somebody who's going to run and hide and say, oh, I'm really busy, I can't answer these questions.
What did you make of the fact that basically his advisors let him down, didn't they? Because they got the emails on Tuesday afternoon, so the day before Prime Minister's questions. And it seems as though they might have said they had some emails, but they certainly didn't tell him the detail of them, because there's no way that he would have gone into PMQs and expressed confidence in Peter Mandelson had he known.
Says who? How do we know that? He could have done. This is the thing. This whole business of, it was my advisors, it's just sad. Take responsibility.
Well, you think he's throwing them under the bus?
Yeah. I think that if you do have advisors who have done something like that, then you should sack them and point them out and make them take responsibility. And all what he's allowing is for there to be speculation. A good leader, a strong leader, takes responsibility, not blame advice. There are all sorts of things that my advisors do that are not particularly helpful. I never come out and say, who's the advisor. I always
give us an example.
No, because they're good people, and people will make mistakes. But you, as the boss, you as the leader, have to take responsibility when your staff make mistakes. You do.
So how much trouble is he in, do you think?
I think he's in a lot of trouble. And let's remember, that this was a man who said that he was going to lead a government of transparency and accountability. That's almost the only thing he said he was going to do. They didn't come into government with any plan. They had no ideas. They just thought, as soon as the Conservatives are gone, everything will be fine. And clearly, that's not the case. Reform is doing the same thing. As soon as the Conservatives and Labour are gone, everything will be fine. We need people who actually know what they are doing. That is not what we're seeing with the Prime Minister. He's shown very, very bad judgment.
Right, Wesley, thank you for that. Let's move on to Josh in Westminster. Josh, what's your question, please?
Good evening, both. Hope you can hear me okay. The
We can.
reception's a little bit shaky on that. Oh, brilliant.
Hi, Josh.
Amazing. Okay, so my question today, Kemi, concerns the fact that a United Nations Commission of Inquiry has now concluded that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza and that top Israeli officials, including Benjamin Netanyahu, have incited these acts. Given your statement on Sky News 2 months ago that Israel has not committed a genocide, I'm hoping your stance has changed.
I'm afraid that my stance has not changed. First of all, the way we can end this war today. This war could end today. That's by releasing the hostages. We must never forget that. There are people in captivity, people taken, little babies, children. They have not all been returned. That would end this war immediately. And Hamas has refused to do that, preferring for its people to go on in a protracted war. And it's awful because the people in Gaza are really suffering. But the reason why I don't agree with the report is because it's a report by a group of people who even the US and Israel said they were already biased before they started writing it. When I was a minister, we had reports by the UN that said our country was really racist. I rejected them. Just because somebody the UN has asked to do a report has come out with a particular statement doesn't mean it's a slam dunk and we have to agree. There's a lot behind the scenes that we need to look at before coming to that conclusion.
I mean, I've got a page from this report in front of me where they go through the 5 definitions of genocide and they illustrate how they think 4 of those conditions have been met. Now, I mean, I don't know what the background of these people is, but you can't just dismiss a report from the UN, can you?
Well, it depends on what kind of report it is. If it's a report by a panel or a group that has countries with, human rights violations, quite often there's bias in there. What we are seeing actually right now is the use of the UN by a lot of hostile states to do things which it was never intended to do. Now, I haven't read the report, but on the face of it, which was the question which Josh was asking me, do I believe that there is a genocide because the UN has said so? I would need to see more evidence than that because I know how a lot of these reports are commissioned, and also because I know this war could be ended today with the release of the hostages.
0345 6060 973 if you'd like to ask Kemi Badenoch a question before 9 o'clock. Let's go to John in Hammersmith. Hello, John.
Evening.
Evening,
Kemi. I was wondering what you thought of the visit of President Trump and the recent announcements, and what the Conservative Party hopes to see from this visit.
The recent announcements, which one specifically? So I just want to... What am I hoping to see from the visit or a particular announcement?
What you're hoping to see going forward, additionally to the announcements that have already been made.
Because I think they've said there's going to be, was it £100 billion of tech investment, which sounded an awful lot to me. If that comes off, great.
I will never say no to investment. When we were in government, we had many of these summits and trade visits and state visits where we had the investment. I would like to see a better trade agreement, an actual full trade agreement with the US that was fair to our farmers, a level playing field, something that was actually going to create growth. A lot of the investment that they've talked about is it's good, but is it going to be good for the high street? Is it going to be good for small business? Google investing helps certain people, but actually what we're seeing all around the country, I've been traveling everywhere. Who is struggling? It's farmers. What are we going to do for farmers? Who's struggling? It's small businessmen, hospitality. This morning I told you I was speaking to a group of hospitality businesses in Soho. They're really, really suffering. So a US deal that would actually do something for smaller businesses, for more everyday people, would be great. Certainly a closer relationship with the US, seeing a genuine special relationship, not just us being at the back of the queue or treated differently. Those are the things that I hope we can fix with this state visit.
Now, you're going to meet President Trump tomorrow at the state banquet, unlike Ed Davey, who's boycotting it. Are you going to help Ed Davey out and do his dirty work for him by asking him about Gaza?
No, I'm not going to be doing that. Ed Davey can do his own work. No, I will be speaking to President Trump about the economy. The economy is the biggest issue. The state of our economy is the biggest issue that's facing the UK. The US is growing at a much faster rate. They're getting a lot richer than us in the UK when we were at parity, and I think at a point when we were actually the wealthier country. And we should be looking at what the US is doing that we can emulate to make sure that we become a richer, more prosperous society. We have at the moment a cabinet, Labour, who do not have any business experience whatsoever. They're making a hash of things, and we need them to change course. So pointing to what the US has done to be successful, I think is one of the best things that we can do with that state visit.
Do you think Donald Trump should have been allowed to address Parliament? Because obviously Parliament has risen today, so there's now a month before it comes back. Or do you think it was very convenient that they've organised for the state visit to effectively start tomorrow?
I think it was clearly orchestrated that way. And it goes back to the point I made about Keir Starmer not really having a backbone. He can't face down his rebel MPs, can't get his votes through on welfare. His appointments, he's blaming his advisors. It's nothing to do with me. Deputy Prime Minister's resigning for not paying taxes. He's lost a senior aide today, his director of strategy, or was that yesterday? Let's go back to Sue Gray. There's just, he's not able to control what's going on. So I think he probably didn't want any hassle from his backbenchers. But last month, or the month before, actually, I think July, we had a state visit from Emmanuel Macron, and he did address Parliament. I think that it's something that we should probably have let President Trump do. He didn't do an address to Parliament on his last state visit, but it's a call for the Prime Minister and the Speaker, I believe.
Kevin texts, will Kemi admit she'll have to do a deal with Nigel Farage after the next election?
No deal.
In advance or after, or both?
This is the thing that I was saying earlier, that I want people to know what the Conservative Party stands for. We are the party of responsibility, personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, civic responsibility. And that also means showing people what your offer is. If you look like you're trying to stitch up the next election, instead of explaining how you're going to make people's lives better, then they think that you're there for yourself, not for them. And what I want your listeners to know is that I'm doing this to make our lives better. I want my children and your children to grow up in a better place. I don't just want to be an MP or in government sitting with Nigel Farage or Keir Starmer or whoever. And
please don't answer this question with, well, that's a hypothetical question, because it is. But you could be faced with a situation after the next election. If the current polls, if Reform are still polling now than what they're polling now, where Nigel Farage becomes, or Reform UK become the largest party, Labour are the second largest, and you're the third largest. Now, I accept you want to be the largest party. We take that as read. And we're going to
work hard and earn people's trust.
But you might be faced with a choice of 5 more years of Labour or a Reform Conservative pact of some description. Now, obviously, the disadvantage of that would be that we know what happens to the smaller parties in coalitions. They tend to get trounced at the following election after that. But would you trade that for 5 more years of Labour?
I'm somebody who is doing this for the right reasons. Why would I go into coalition with a left-wing party like Reform? They want more debt, more spending, more welfare. That's the same as Labour. So what's the difference between going into coalition with them and going into coalition with Labour? Everybody's listening to Reform on immigration, because we made mistakes in immigration. I've acknowledged that. That's why I've come up with new policies that are much tougher. But on the economy, they want to do a lot of things that don't add up. How can I, in good conscience, say that I'm fiscally responsible and then go into coalition with a party that wants to spend, as Danny Kruger himself said just in July, spend your money like a drunken sailor?
Why would he defect to a party when he said that only in July?
I think that's an excellent question, and you should ask Danny that. But I'm not going to get distracted by what all these people are doing. Lots of people will jump because they think it's all too difficult.
But you know as well as I do that as the next election approaches, and everyone... Keir Starmer always thinks it's going to be a 5-year parliament, but most prime ministers go after 4 years. So I suspect it'll be 2028. Now, that's 3 years away, a long time. But you know as well as I do that the nearer you get to an election, people like me will really be pushing you on this sort of thing. And the electorate will want to know, well, if I vote for her, OK, she wants to win, we know that. But if she doesn't win, what would she do? And I think the electorate do deserve an answer to that question, don't they?
I think you're right. People want to know what Kemi Badenoch will do about everything. Right now, what I need to do is show people what kind of person I am. What are the things which I believe in and the things that I disagree with? That's why, even though, your callers ask some very tough questions and they may not like my answer, at least they know what I stand for, what I believe. I'm not being wishy-washy or messing about. I am somebody who is doing this out of conviction.
Well,
that's what they need to know.
This next question,
not about, who will you do a deal with?
I think this next question, I'm going to be really interested in your answer to this. Not that I haven't been interested in the others. James is in Shrewsbury. Hello, James.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Kemi.
Hello.
Hi, yeah, so my question really is, full disclosure, I see myself as someone being left of centre, pro-European, etc. And if you hope to win power at the next election, you're going to need a broad coalition of support. So I was wondering, a bit of an open-ended question, really, but what's your pitch to people like me who don't see themselves as right-wing, who see themselves as left of centre?
James, it's a really good question because, of course, in order to be a credible government, you need to have a broad base of support. Labour won with just 34% of the vote, which I think is why they're having quite a few problems because they didn't have a genuine mandate for some of the policies they put through. So I'm somebody who is very firmly on the centre-right, but even when speaking to a left-leaning voter like yourself, I know that there are some things that we will agree on. One of them is that we need to live within our means and not borrow to the extent that we crash our economy. We need to be fiscally responsible. I'm sure you would not disagree with that. So showing you that we're a party that's going to make sure that you and your family members have jobs, that the cost of living can be brought down because we have the right policies, that we're leaving an inheritance for your children, for the next generation, and that these policies will actually work. They're not just things we're saying so that we can get your vote. I think that's where we find that common ground. I mean, you talked about being pro-European. I'm pro-European. What I'm not pro is losing our sovereignty to another body like the EU. But there is still a way for us to have close relationships with our near neighbours. I had a very good meeting with Emmanuel Macron. It wasn't acrimonious. And I think it's making sure that we can have good relationships without sacrificing.
What did he ask you? I mean, how did that conversation go?
It was quite a fun conversation. He's very, he's a very interesting guy. He's very charming in person, as many politicians who get to the top are. And he talked about, we talked about protests, because France has a lot of the problems that we have. They've just lost their president. Their prime minister just a few days ago. They have many of the same issues we do. They've got a small boats problem. They've got a population of people who want to retire early, and a younger generation feeling that they're being left out of economic progress and prosperity. And we talked about fixing the economy, how we would we didn't agree on the Convention on Human Rights, for example, but it's perfectly easy to have a civil conversation about the things you agree with. Too often we talk about the things we disagree on.
But James's question, I think, goes to the heart of where you might head over the next few years, because I think most people listening to this will say, well, Kemi sounds quite right-wing on a lot of issues. But actually, a lot of the seats that you've got to win back are from the Liberal Democrats. What are you doing to attract former Conservatives who voted Lib Dem at the last election?
We have to make sure that we have a better offer on a whole range of things than every other party. I think that we're already doing that. We've got strong policies on immigration, strong policies on the economy. I keep saying that we need to live within our means. What we're spending on welfare, right, is getting.
But if I'm a Lib Dem voter, I'm not sure that appeals to me particularly.
Well, I think people who vote Lib Dem vote very much on the economy. And when we look at why a lot of people voted Lib Dem, it was because they were concerned about the economy. But I don't think that we should split people into all these groups so definitively. A lot of people vote Lib Dem and Reform because they're voting none of the above. I don't want Labour, I don't want Conservative, who else is likely to win? And they go there. It's not because they believe in any particular Lib Dem values. I couldn't even tell you, apart from being, on the trans debate. I don't actually know what Lib Dem stand for on a whole range of things.
Proportional representation.
Yeah, so exactly. That's not going to improve people's That's not going to improve people's lives. They're very, very wishy-washy. And I think right now what we need in our country is strong leadership. I don't think that the Lib Dems would be offering that. And I know that there are many people who will want to be convinced because we've just come out of a long period of Conservative government. People voted for change. They've now got Labour. Change for the worse. Everything is going wrong. Unemployment has risen every single month since Labour got into power. That's not a good place for us to be as a country.
James, do you think that you could envisage yourself voting for Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives?
I think Kemi's a very good communicator, but I'm not really Kemi's target market. I'm a Labour member. I'm part of a trade union, but I'm just interested to see. It seems like the Conservatives seem to be trying to win reform votes, and I understand that because the right has split, and that's unusual in this country. Usually it's us on the left who are splitting, but there doesn't seem to be a lot there for people like me. I remember the coalition years when there were some things that people might agree with, even if they do see.
What did you like in the coalition, James? If you don't mind me asking, what would you be looking for? Right, there's a centre-right party. I wouldn't agree with everything, but what would you be looking for that you think there's common ground between you and I? Because I think that's quite an interesting point. The fact that you're asking me this question makes me feel that you're not 100% happy with what Labour's doing. So what would you be looking for?
For me, I'd be looking for not to talk about the coalition because it didn't happen massively under that, but a modernisation of the tax system. I think employee national insurance, I don't think is a good tax. I don't think we should be taxing work.
I've been talking about that pretty much every Prime Minister's questions. I think that what Labour did in the budget has made it really expensive to hire people, and young people are paying the price. That's what those businesses that I was speaking to this morning were telling me. So we do agree on that.
Yeah, I think we do, but obviously if you're going to cut that, you'll need to pay for it somehow, and I think a broader-based tax like income tax would be a good way. Take 6p off national insurance and put 5p on income tax. That sort of thing could help.
Well, send me your policies, James. I'm not making any commitments. I am someone who wants low tax, but send me your policies. Let's have a look. Let's see if there's something in there that we can agree on.
James, send them to me and I'll send them to her and I'll make sure she gets them. James, thank you very much indeed. Right, let's do a few quickfire questions because I know you love those. Fracking, drill, baby, drill, or keep the ban?
Let's drill in the North Sea. Fracking, local communities need to decide if they want it or not. Most don't want it.
Would you rather face Andy Burnham or Shabana Mahmood at PMQs?
I'm not worried about either of them.
15-year-old Owen Cooper won an Emmy. Did you ever end up watching Adolescence?
No, but clearly the Prime Minister did.
You're resolutely sticking to it.
No, it's now a hard line.
Now, we know you don't like sandwiches, but if you had to, what would be your favourite?
Well, I like a sandwich that's made an effort. So, an Egg McMuffin from McDonald's, a burger. Those are sandwiches that are trying really hard to get my attention, so I'll have those.
Forget the sugar tax. What's your favourite sugary drink?
I don't actually. I drink a lot of zero sugar drinks. The drink I have that I put sugar in is probably my cup of tea.
Kemi, thank you very much indeed for coming in. We'll see you, I won't say same time next month.